Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Expansive virtual recording as well as podcast, depending when you're listening to this and where you're listening to it. Thank you so much again for joining us. We know there are a bazillion podcasts, and you've chosen to be with us here today. I know what a tough time I have listening to different podcasts because there's so many good ones out there. And before we start today's session, we just want to say we are in the 1.5 top podcasts in the world, 1.5% of the top podcasts in the world. Again, quite a shocking thing to have discovered, but what an incredible thing. So of the 2 bazillion podcasts out there, we fall into the 1.5% of them. So really an exciting thing for Erik and I to do. And Rhonda, how's it? Matthew, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. And before I carry on blahing, let me check in with my co-host and co-pilot, the ever handsome Erik Kruger.
There we go. Nice.
Hello, bud.
Changing it up. Changing it up.
Changing it up.
Listen, always good to be here on a Wednesday at 3 p.m. South African Standard Time. And it's good to see people tuning in from across the world. What a privilege to see that the podcast has been doing so well. I think a big part of it, obviously, is the fact that we've been so consistent. I think this is we're nearing number 70 on this show. I'm not sure if I thought we'd ever get this far. Like we just started and we were like, well, let's see how we go. And we do have some ambitious goals to perhaps turn some of what we are speaking about into a book, like The Expansive, the book. But I'm not quite sure if I thought we would get to 70 episodes, top 10 rankings, top 20 podcasts from trends, and all the good things. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's so great, because I think every single one of them has been a surprise. I don't think we expected any of them. In fact, it was an absolute mistake. I think I just sent you an WhatsApp, and I was like, this other podcast got into the 2.5% top websites podcasts in the world. How's that possible? I mean, he's good. He's not that good. And and Erik was like, let me check us. And I was like, what? We're in the top 1.5%. So look, I imagine there must be the top ones like the Joe Rogans and the Tim Ferrisses and those guys that really fill up that first sort of 1%, I imagine, or 0.5%. And then you have the sort of, the rest of the guys pulling in here with a few thousand listeners instead of a few million listeners. But it's always great to have everybody joining us. And thank you so much for being on the journey of the Expansive, always about expansiveness of self, of business, of mind, and of leadership. And both Erik and I are specialists in those topics around psychology and leadership and the future. We're continuously creating masterclasses, talks, and writing books. We've been waiting for Erik's book for the last 24 months, and apparently it's still close. Every time I speak to Erik, his book's still coming. It's like nearly there. And that's. I think we should do a whole episode of don't be perfect, be prolific. And Erik is obviously just addicted to perfection because that book, I'm sure, was ready months ago, but still waiting. Erik, tell us a little bit what's going on with that baby.
Yeah, so the topic for today is mental.
Okay, well, the next topic is going to be avoidance. We'll talk about avoidance next week. Please join in. We'll have a case study.
Well, listen, the book is in progress. I think what we should also say is that there is a book coming out very soon in June, I think, that we both contributed to. It's called the book Every Business Leader Must Read. Right?
Yes, I know about that book. Yes.
So we contributed to that. So that's coming out in June. And my book is definitely in progress. So that is a good thing as well.
Look, my book comes out in August. I don't want to say anything, but I mean, it would be terrible if my book comes out before yours because I've started writing it after yours. And I don't know how my book's going to be called 10,000 Days, just in case anybody wants to know. But we're waiting for Dangerous.
I thought that was a 2022 project.
No, 2021. We'll have something else for 2022. Yeah.
Perfect. Love it. Listen, brother.
Okay, so let's talk about today's topic, which is something that you are really focused in on around decision-making and mental models. I think this is really interesting because I always make my decisions emotionally. And I do know that that is the wrong thing to do. And as I'm getting older, I delay any decision making while I'm angry. And just a few weeks ago, I sent you a message that I was dying to put on social media. And you came back, you were like, thank goodness you didn't post that. I was like, yes, thank goodness I didn't. I'm glad you just read it, and let's leave it and burn it. So yes, decision-making and mental models. Erik, take us away and explain to us what this means and what your latest research has taught us.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think I like your intro around it, because I think that, decision-making is such a crucial part of our lives, of how we create success, of choosing, one path versus the other, and the outcomes that we create as a result of that. Yet we spend very little time thinking about a decision-making process and how we can improve it. And so a while ago, I think I mentioned in the previous podcast that I created this like decision-making journal for myself. And what I've been doing is just keeping track of the decisions I'm making. What does the outcome look like? What is my reasoning behind why I'm making a decision? This is right up my alley, because I'm a bit more analytical, I think, when it comes to these kind of things. So I've been enjoying the process, and it's already taught me a lot. But mental models, which is really what I want to speak about today, is essentially saying, here are certain filters, here are certain ideas, frameworks that we know are important, that it's been proven over time, and that when you make a decision, you can use these as a tool. So intuitive decision-making is a great thing, but sometimes you might just want to check that against a tool. And that tool could give you a bit of objectivity. It could give you some distance. It could just give you a different perception of the challenge, the opportunity that you're going through. So it's like a filter that you're putting over the world. And I was saying to you, I made a video about it today. That's why it's like fresh and top of mind for me, that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. We've heard that quote so many times. I know Joe Dispenza says it. I think Wayne Dyer said it at some point, but I think almost
I think it was Wayne Dyer. Yeah, I think anyway. Yeah, I think it was Wayne Dyer though. Yeah.
And that's what a mental model is. It's a filter that you put over the world, and then it helps you to understand what is happening. So like the easiest one to explain, for example, is supply and demand. Like once you have the mental model of supply and demand, now you understand how the markets work. Now you understand why some goods prices might go up and down during the year. Now you understand, should I start this business or not? Because supply and demand, like would this be a viable business for me, for example? So I have 4 mental models that I thought I would take you through, and then we can just like have a bit of a banter and see like, what do you think of these as well? So let me get straight into the first one.
I'm looking forward to it, but I got to say, a good friend of ours, Gilan, who's a mentalist, him and I were talking many years ago about hiring a personal assistant, a business manager to work with you. And Gilan's also incredibly analytic, right? And so he developed 15 questions, an Excel spreadsheet. He interviewed 40 different people to try and get the right person. And 6 months later, we both had gone through the personal assistant that we had hired, and we didn't have one. And I kind of just like went on a whim. I was like, I like this person. She'll be great. Let's work together and trial it out. And both of us were laughing because I just went on a gut feel, and he went on a whole Excel spreadsheet and did a whole aptitude test, and it didn't work out either. So again, I think this is very similar to when it comes to morning routines or evening routines. Each one of these need to be taken with a pinch of salt and also understood, how does this fit in with my natural persona? So for example, you could be a lot more emotional in your decisions. I could be a lot more analytical. And so that we can also like feed off both styles, because I don't think one style is better than the other, but I'm looking forward to seeing how you unpack this.
I'm glad you said that, because ultimately that's what a mental model is. It just gives you a new filter. It's not the only filter. It's not the perfect filter. It's just an additional filter. Nice. And, the problem is, and we both understand this very well, that your mind becomes so conditioned. Because we all have mental models. They're just a part of how we operate and navigate in the world. The problem is that you get stuck in your paradigm, in your mental model from years before, and you can't use that to navigate how you're moving forward. And so sometimes you might want to pull a different mental model out of the box and just say, how does this apply here? And to me, like, what it allows you to do is to naturally offset where you might be poor at making decisions. So if you rush into decision makings, a mental model that you then start creating for yourself is, well, I delay it first. I delay a decision. And that turns into a mental model for you of how you approach making big decisions.
Okay.
Cool.
I like that.
So let's go into the four ones. We have about 10 minutes to get through these. So number one is the Pareto principle. And I started with this one just because
Pareto principle.
That's it. You'll know it. It's the 80-20 principle.
Oh, of course.
And all it says is that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. And so once you start or essentially the vital few things give you a disproportionate return. So what does this mean? It means that when you go look at, for example, your client list, that 20% of your clients most likely give you 80% of your revenue. That when you go look at your social media post, 20% of them probably resonate more with people than the rest of the post, and they give you 80% of the engagement and the likes and all those kind of things. So what the 80-20 principle says is that, well, first of all, forget about the ratio. The 80-20 principle is just like a very sticky name. But it's not about the specific ratio. All it says is that when you go and assess your life, your business, you will always find things that give you a disproportionate return. And what we want to do is we want to focus more on the things that are working and that give us this exponential return versus focusing on the things that aren't working. So that is the first principle.
Can you give me an example of, can you give me an example of something in your life?
Yeah, so actually the social media one for me is actually a very pertinent one. And especially since I've been getting more and more into YouTube, like I'm spending a lot of time looking at my videos and trying to understand what kind of topics are resonating for people. And that's exactly what you do when you do this analysis then, is you'll see, well, I've published 10 videos and most likely 2, 3, 4 of those videos received a ton more views than the other videos. And then you start thinking, well, what are the topics that I covered here? What were the things that I was doing that made these videos more popular? And then you start creating videos along that vein. Now you have 10 videos that's been created in a new style because they were resonating more. And then you can do it again. You can say, well, which of these 10 resonated the most? Well, these 2 or 3, what was I doing?
So it's a constant process of iteration and
constant process.
Fine tuning, right? With that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. All right.
You might also see, for example, in your business that, everyone is trying to be everywhere. So you're trying to be on LinkedIn, Twitter, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You're trying to be everywhere. But when you go and look at where do my leads come from, what you might see is that one channel really serves you way better than the rest. Like you get 10 from Facebook, but you get 1 from Twitter, 1 from Instagram, whatever. Like just by doing that analysis, what does it tell you? Well, it tells me go spend a hell of a lot more time getting good at Facebook. But I think that's the whole idea behind the Pareto principle is like, we need to stop at times, zoom out and ask ourselves, where are we getting the best bang for our buck? And then go and invest more time, effort, and energy into that. Like it's extremely obvious. I'm not trying to pretend like a mental model is like this revolutionary thing. It's extremely obvious, but we need to go and do it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I like it.
Cool. So that's number one. Number two is the mental model of inversion. So what we typically do is when we are setting out to achieve a goal, the question that I'll ask myself, which is the natural question, is how can I achieve this goal? Or how will I attain success in this endeavor? And that's fine. We'll sit down, we'll create and map out a few steps that we can take in order to get there. But ultimately, and we all know this, like once you start engaging in the real world, things start going wrong. And all of a sudden, like you are kind of all over the show, you've lost your focus and you don't know what to do. And so the inversion model says you need to ask the opposite question. You need to flip this on its head. You need to, in a way, I almost want to say, like, look at the negative side of things. So like, instead of saying, how can I achieve success? You'll ask, how might I fail? And all of a sudden, that'll give you a very different answer. Because when you ask, how might I fail in achieving something, you'll have this entire list of obstacles that you might need to encounter, or market-related issues or marketing-related issues. Like it'll give you an idea of where you could go wrong. And when you have that, you can go and do something about it.
Okay, I like this. Hang on. So
you get to plan for it.
Yeah, so I talk about the victory condition and the failure condition. And it's almost like asking, so what does it look like when I win and what does it look like when I fail? So that I have both in my periphery, and I've created a boundary on investment, on energy, on whatever. It's just what does it look like when I'm winning? What does it look like when I'm losing? That I have that clarity there.
It's almost like playing devil's advocate for yourself.
Yes.
You know?
Okay.
And
yeah, that's powerful.
I remember, many years ago, my brother and I used to stay together for a very long time. And I would have all these business ideas. And the whole time he would just be like, but what if you fail like this? What if people don't like it like this? What if and I used to get so irritated with him. Like, I'm like, just be more positive, man. Like, just and now I understand the power of doing that, because often we don't think through the things that might get in the way. And as soon as you do that, like, this also starts making you more anti-fragile. You want to speak about anti-fragility. Like, how do we become more anti-fragile? We think about the things that might lead to us becoming undone, and we put measures in place that will prevent that from happening, right?
Very good.
So same thing. So the inversion is flip the question on its head. Try and think about it from a different angle. I also heard someone today speak about it being orthogonal, or like orthogonal thinking, like thinking from a different angle. Number 3, tight feedback loops. So when people engage in self-development, when they engage in growing their business, very often we forget to put balances and checks in place that will help us to see, are we actually on track to growth? Sometimes we have very basic measures like revenue, for example, might be sure, there is a feedback loop, but I think it's very basic, and sometimes it doesn't give you the full picture. What we really need is to create feedback loops that are very short and that give us a good full picture of whether we are improving on the thing that we really want to improve upon, right? So again, I'm going to, yeah.
Is that measuring small wins? Is that changing the goal sets to be saying, look, I've got these smaller milestones rather than just the big milestones, so I can keep checking in on myself and saying, am I moving towards the right thing? Does this decision fit into the long picture? Celebrate the small step towards the long picture? Is that another way of saying it or not?
It is. And I would just say it's not necessarily your small wins, but it's a regular check-in on the behavior, and it might be a win, it might not be a win. Like, that's actually exactly what you want it for. You want to see whether you are winning or failing. And so I don't know if you've heard of a lag measure versus a lead measure. I think that's what they call it. So a lag measure would be revenue. Like, you'll see that at the end of the month, whereas a lead measure is how many calls did you make today, for example, right?
Very good.
Like, how many?
Very good. Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of along the lines of what you're looking at here is, what is the behavior that you've identified that you want to be better at, and how will you improve on that? So, like, you can do internal feedback, which is a little journal, something where you reflect on it. And you can do external feedback, where you get feedback from people around you telling you, listen, you on track or off track, like, this is how you need to change. So
I like that. I mean, I think I'm just thinking about my own business and thinking about the things that I'm doing that I see as celebratory wins. Turnover is one measure, but developing new courses or having new connections or meeting with this guy in Munich I was telling you about before our call, that for me is a win. I like to celebrate that, because that shows me I'm on the right track towards the bigger picture. So what did you call this third step, the third one?
Just tight feedback loops.
Like, tight feedback loops. I like
I just think we need to make sure that it's short cycles. So that's the tight part. And then to make sure that there is some sort of feedback that you have. And it won't always be positive. I think that's the only thing I'm trying to land here. Is like, the wins are the positive ones, but you also need to realize when you're not on track. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm really saying, like, we have to build that in. And then the fourth one is about where you are spending your time. And it's about the learning zone versus the performance zone. And I made a post about this yesterday as well. And essentially, we are spending all of our time in one of these two zones. So the performance zone is where we get to do the work that we do every single day. It's the grind, it's the hustle. And it's important for us to operate here because it gives us a certain outcome that we want to achieve or attain. It helps us to work towards our goals. But this kind of engrossed approach that we have towards our work means that we often don't learn. And what we really need to do then is to create time to step into the learning zone. And the learning zone's main function is improvement. So you have the performance zone, which is outcome driven, and you have the learning zone, which is improvement driven. And I think, we're fortunate in a way because much of what we do is about learning. We have to step into the learning zone every single day to learn about new mental models, new ideas, new trends, what's happening in the world, because we get to apply that into our clients' lives through our keynotes and through the master classes and all the things like that. But we see it so often that people get trapped in their rituals, their habits, their daily grind, and therefore they don't get to step back and learn new things. They don't get to spend the time reflecting on using the feedback that they've been given and then improving the way they think and the way they behave.
Yeah, that's so good, because I think a lot of the times we get caught up in to-do lists and really like the daily idea of what busy is, and never have any time or energy to bring anything new into our lives. So, and then we complain that life is boring. It's because we just haven't put any new input in. So yeah, that's very good. It's are you learning or are you working? Like, which one are you doing? And it's good to have the mornings available for learning and the rest of the day for working, because your mind is fresh then. Just recap the 4 for us, Erik, before we close off.
Cool. So the 4 mental models, number 1 was the Pareto principle. So the 80-20, look for the vital few things that give you a disproportionate return and just go do more of that. The second was inversion. So try and look at things from a different angle, invert the question that you are asking. So if you're saying, how can I succeed? Also think about, how might I fail here? The third was to speak about tight feedback loops, or to implement tight feedback loops. And the fourth is the learning zone versus the performance zone. And
I think those are really great, eh? What a great structure and a way to think about your day, your week, your month, to say, where am I focusing in on, and how am I demarcating my time?
And, you know, if you look at it, like each of these, it's just a filter, like you said. Like the filter of learning versus performance means, what does your day look like? The filter of feedback loops is, well, do you have the information you need in order to improve? The filter of inversion is, yeah, sure, things might go well, but you also operate in the real world where things don't go wrong. Have you considered those things? And then the filter of the 80-20 says, yes, you are investing in so many different things at the same time. So many, well, I mean, you'll probably see this in the stock market as well. You know, if you go look at your portfolio, that 20% of your stocks give you 80% of what your, so what that then tells you is like, okay, are you finding the things that are really working well in your business or in your personal life? And are you investing more time into that?
Very good.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is I'm loving the topic and I'm exploring it a hell of a lot. We've had quite a few people join us today, which has been great. Thank you very much, Dr. Elaine. We had Michelle join as well. Franco spoke about OKRs, and I know people can go check that out as well. John Dewar's OKRs. Yeah, listen, dude, this has been great. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your research with us. I like it. I think demarcating and giving language to different ways of thinking gives us an anchor point into things to hold on to while we plan our days, to expand and to grow and to evolve and to add value to the world. So thank you, Erik. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to you and having that calm, I'm trying to think of your 2 words for the year. What were they? Relaxed focus,
concentration.
Relaxed concentration. That's exactly what I felt while you were talking. I felt relaxed and I was concentrating on exactly what you were saying. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope this has helped everybody that's listening. If you feel like this could help anybody out there, please do share it with them. And until next week, please look after yourself. And once you've done that, go and look after somebody else, or even a doggy. Go and look after a doggy.
Yeah.
Give your doggy a big hug and a big kiss. They're such special beings. Erik and I are big lovers of dogs. Erik, thanks so much for your time, man. Anything you want to close off with?
No, just there's been new research that showed that petting a dog relieves more stress than traditional stress management techniques. So if you needed any more sort of a push, there you go.
Yes,
research confirms it.
I like that. I like it. Okay, ciao, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.